There's a moment in every long-term relationship where one side assumes loyalty is permanent. They stop earning it, they start expecting it, and when it breaks, they never see it coming. In August 2019, a 54-year-old corn and soybean farmer named Dale Hoffman stood in his machine shed in Audrain County, Missouri, and made a decision that would cost him $87,000 in resale value, strain relationships with 3 neighboring farms, and force a John Deere dealership 41 miles away to rewrite their service policy manual. He didn't announce it, he didn't threaten it, he just did it. 28 years of green iron, gone in one auction, replaced with red Massey Ferguson machines bought used from Iowa, Kansas, and Nebraska. Machines with 4,000 more hours, machines without factory backing, machines his banker called a mistake you can't afford to make. But Dale wasn't making a financial decision, he was making a loyalty decision. And the thing about loyalty decisions is this: once they're made, they don't reverse easy. The John Deere dealer found out 2 weeks after the auction closed. The regional sales manager found out 4 days after that. 30 days later, that sales manager drove 190 miles unannounced, walked up to Dale's gate at 7:15 in the morning, and asked one question: what would it take to bring you back? The answer he got changed how that dealership operated for the next 6 years. This is the story of what happens when a corporation mistakes longevity for loyalty, when a farmer bets his operation on principle, and when a $14,200 warranty denial becomes the most expensive decision a dealership never saw coming. The breaking point. Dale Hoffman ran 1,840 acres of corn and soybeans across 3 parcels in northeastern Missouri. His family didn't own the land. They rented it. That meant every input dollar mattered. Every repair bill got scrutinized. Every equipment decision carried weight. For 28 years, Dale bought green. His first major purchase was a 1991 John Deere 4960 he picked up used in 1993. Paid $48,000 cash. Ran it for 19 seasons without a catastrophic failure. When the time came to step up, he bought a 7230R in 2014. Financed, $186,000 with trade, 230 horsepower. IVT transmission. Factory warranty good for 3 years or 2,000 engine hours. Dale put 1,847 hours on that tractor in the first 2 years. He ran it hard, but he ran it right. Oil changes every 250 hours. Filter replacements on schedule. Grease daily. He kept a service log in the cab. Every entry dated. Every fluid level checked. In May 2017, 11 months after the factory warranty expired, the transmission started slipping under load. Not all the time. Just in 6th gear. Just when pulling the 16-row planter through heavy bottom ground. Dale noticed it first in the South 40. The RPMs would spike, ground speed would drop, and the tractor would lug like it was hunting for a gear it couldn't find. He took it to the dealership the next week. Schroeder implement. Same place he'd bought it. Same service department that had done every oil change since day one. He dropped the tractor off on a Tuesday morning and told the service writer exactly what was happening. The diagnosis came back 4 days later. IVT clutch pack failure. Internal transmission wear. Repair estimate, $22,700 in parts and labor. Dale asked the question every farmer asks when a $186,000 tractor grenades 11 months out of warranty. Any chance this gets covered? The service manager said he'd submit it to John Deere as a goodwill claim. That was a Friday. Dale waited 9 days. The answer came back in an email forwarded from the dealership. Claim denied. Reason, outside warranty period. No coverage available. The email didn't offer a partial. It didn't offer a payment plan. It didn't acknowledge the service history or the oil log or the fact that Dale had put $340,000 into John Deere iron over the last 23 years. It just said no. Dale called the dealership that afternoon, asked to speak to the general manager, got transferred to voicemail, left a message, didn't get a call back for 3 days. When the call finally came, the general manager's position was clear. The warranty had expired. The failure fell outside coverage guidelines, and if Dale wanted the tractor fixed, the dealership could get it done in 2 weeks for the quoted price. No negotiation, no goodwill gesture, No acknowledgement that losing a $22,700 repair 11 months after a warranty expires might feel like getting robbed in slow motion. Dale hung up the phone and made a decision. He told the dealership to leave the tractor as is. He'd pick it up himself. He paid the $280 diagnostic fee, hooked the 7230R to his farm truck, and towed it back to his shed. Then he sat down at his kitchen table and started making calls. Not to John Deere, to auction companies. The fleet purge. Dale Hoffman owned 4 pieces of John Deere iron. The 7230R with the blown transmission, a 2006 John Deere 9660 STS combine with 2,140 separator hours, a 1998 John Deere 8300 used as a backup tractor, a 2011 John Deere 1770 NT 16-row planter. Together they represented 28 years of brand loyalty, $680,000 in cumulative purchase price, and a service relationship that had generated over $90,000 in maintenance revenue for Schroeder Implement. Dale listed all of it. He contacted a regional auction service called Hale & Sons out of Columbia, Missouri. Told them he wanted everything sold in one lot. On-site auction. Cash terms. Scheduled for the 3rd Saturday in August. The auction company asked why he was selling. Dale said he was switching brands. They didn't ask which brand. They just said they'd run the ads. The announcement went out 6 weeks before the sale. It ran in Farm World, Farmers Hotline, and 3 regional Facebook equipment groups. The listing was simple. Complete John Deere fleet dispersal, Audrin County MO, Aug 17, 2019. It listed the machines. It listed the hours. It noted that the 7230R had a transmission issue and would sell as is. Within 2 weeks, the listing had been shared 140 times. Farmers from 4 states called to ask questions. Most of them asked the same thing. Why is he selling everything at once? The auction company didn't have an answer. Dale didn't offer one. The sale drew 67 registered bidders. The 9660 combine sold for $81,000. The 8300 backup tractor brought $19,400. The planter went for $28,500. The 7230R, even with the bad transmission, sold to a Kansas farmer for $52,000. Total sale, $180,900. Dale had $214,000 left on the note for the 7230R and the combine. After the sale cleared, he was $33,100 underwater. He wrote the check to the bank the following Monday. Then, he got in his truck and started driving. The Massey Ferguson bet. Dale Hoffman didn't walk into a Massey Ferguson dealership. He couldn't. The closest authorized Massey Ferguson dealer was 140 miles away in Des Moines, Iowa. The next closest was in Concordia, Kansas, 290 miles west. So Dale did what farmers do when they're rebuilding a fleet on principle and limited capital. He went hunting. First stop, a used equipment lot in Washington, Iowa. They had a 2011 Massey Ferguson 8660 with 3,100 hours, 280 horsepower, Dyna VT transmission. The salesman said it had come off a hog operation in northeast Iowa that had consolidated with a neighbor and didn't need the capacity. Dale test drove it in a dirt lot behind the dealership, ran it through all 8 gears, checked the hydraulics, pulled a loaded grain cart to see how the transmission behaved under load. It didn't slip. He bought it for $74,000. Second stop, Hays, Kansas. A farmer retiring out of wheat had a 2008 Massey Ferguson 9895 combine listed online. 2,890 separator hours, 30-foot head, Cummins engine. The farmer said it had spent its entire life in dryland wheat and hadn't seen a muddy field since it left the factory. Dale flew to Kansas, drove the combine for 40 minutes, and made an offer, $68,000. The farmer took it. Third stop, a farm estate auction in Clarinda, Iowa. Dale drove up on a Tuesday and bought a 1999 Massey Ferguson 8160 with 5,200 hours for $22,500. It would serve as his backup tractor. It burned oil. The cab smelled like diesel, but it started, it pulled, and it didn't cost him 6 figures. Fourth stop, a used planter from a dealership in Ottawa, Kansas, not Massey Ferguson. A 2009 Kins 3600 16-row, but it bolted to the Massey tractor just fine, and at $31,000, it cost less than trying to find red iron that matched. Total outlay, $195,500. Add in $4,800 in transport fees to get everything back to Missouri, and Dale had replaced his entire fleet for $200,300. He was still $33,100 in the hole from the auction loss. But now he had machines that worked, machines that didn't carry the baggage of a $14,200 warranty denial, machines that didn't come from a dealership that forgot to call him back. Dale pulled the Massey Ferguson 8660 into his shed on August 29, 2019. The John Deere dealer found out about the fleet change on September 11. The dealer's discovery. Schroeder Implement didn't hear about the auction from Dale. They heard about it from another customer. A farmer named Rick Menke ran 2,400 acres 2 townships over. He'd been buying from Schroeder for 31 years. He'd also been at Dale's auction. Didn't buy anything. Just came to watch. Rick walked into Schroeder Implement on a Wednesday morning to pick up a hydraulic filter for his 8320R. While the parts guy pulled the filter, Rick mentioned what he'd seen. "You know, Dale Hoffman sold out of all his green iron, right?" The parts guy didn't know. Rick told him. Told him about the auction. Told him about the Massey Ferguson machines Dale had been hauling in over the last 2 weeks. Told him the whole lot was talking about it. The parts guy walked the information back to the service manager. The service manager walked it to the general manager. The general manager pulled Dale's account file. 7 equipment purchases since 1993, 91 service visits, $91,400 in parts and labor revenue over 28 years. No late payments, no conflicts, until the warranty denial. The general manager called the regional John Deere sales manager that afternoon, explained the situation. Explained that a 28-year customer had liquidated his entire fleet, bought used Massey Ferguson iron from 3 states, and never said a word to the dealership. The regional manager asked one question. "Did we try to work with him on that transmission?" The general manager said they'd submitted the goodwill claim. Corporate denied it. That was the end of the process. The regional manager said that wasn't good enough. 4 days later, on September 15th, the regional sales manager got in his truck in Springfield, Illinois, and drove 190 miles west to Audrain County, Missouri. He didn't call ahead. He just showed up. The gate conversation. Dale Hoffman was greasing the Massey Ferguson 8660 in his shed when he saw the white Ford F-250 pull into his driveway. It was 7:15 in the morning. He didn't recognize the truck, but he recognized the John Deere logo on the door. Dale set the grease gun down and walked out to meet the man at the gate. The regional sales manager introduced himself. Said his name was Tom Carlin. Said he was out of the Springfield territory. Said he'd heard about the fleet change and wanted to talk. Dale didn't open the gate. Tom asked if they could sit down for a few minutes. Dale said they could talk right there. Tom got straight to it. "What would it take to bring you back?" Dale looked at him for a long time. Then he said, "You're about 4 months and $14,200 too late." Tom said he understood. Said he'd reviewed the file. Said the warranty denial was a corporate decision, not a dealership decision, but that didn't mean it was the right decision. Dale said it didn't matter anymore. Tom asked what he meant. Dale said, "I've already moved on. I've got Massey Ferguson iron in my shed. It works. It doesn't come with the baggage of wondering whether you're going to cover a failure or leave me hanging." Tom said the dealership wanted to make it right. Dale asked how. Tom said they could offer a $10,000 credit toward a new tractor purchase. Or they could retrofit the 7230R transmission at cost and sell it back to him at a discount. Dale shook his head. "You're not hearing me. I'm not interested in a discount. I'm not interested in a credit. I'm interested in knowing that when I buy a $186,000 piece of equipment and take care of it the way it's supposed to be taken care of, I'm not going to get hung out to dry 11 months after the warranty expires." Tom said he understood the frustration. Dale said, "No, you don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't have driven 3 hours to offer me a credit. You'd have covered that transmission when it mattered." Tom didn't have an answer for that. He stood there for a moment. Then he asked one more question. "What are you going to do if one of those Massey Ferguson machines breaks?" Dale smiled. "Same thing I did with the John Deere. I'll fix it, but at least I won't be surprised when nobody shows up to help." Tom thanked him for his time. He got back in the truck and drove the 190 miles back to Springfield. He didn't call Dale again. But 6 weeks later, Schroeder Implement changed their service policy. The policy rewrite. The new policy went into effect on November 1st, 2019. It was a simple addition to the dealership's existing goodwill procedure. Any equipment failure occurring within 18 months of warranty expiration would automatically qualify for a case review. If the equipment had a documented service history with the dealership and no history of abuse or neglect, the dealership would submit a goodwill claim to corporate with full dealership support, and that including a written recommendation for partial or full coverage. If corporate denied the claim, the dealership would offer to cover 30% of the repair cost out of their own margin. It wasn't a blanket promise, but it was a policy. A documented, written commitment that said the dealership valued long-term relationships more than one-time revenue hits. The general manager at Schroeder Implement never called Dale to tell him about the change, but word got around. Rick Menke heard about it from his service advisor during an oil change in December. He mentioned it to another farmer at the co-op. That farmer mentioned it to his neighbor. By February 2020, 4 farms in Audrain County knew that Schroeder Implement had rewritten their service policy because a farmer named Dale Hoffman had walked away with $680,000 worth of iron and never looked back. It changed the way those farmers thought about loyalty. It changed the way they thought about leverage, and it changed the way they negotiated when something went wrong. The Massey Ferguson grind. Dale Hoffman didn't have time to think about John Deere's policy changes. He was too busy learning how to operate a fleet he'd bought on principle instead of research. The 8660 ran strong. The Dyna VT transmission was smoother than the IVT in the 7230R had ever been. The hydraulics responded faster. The cab was quieter. Dale put 340 hours on it in the first 60 days and didn't have a single failure. But the combine was a different story. The Massey Ferguson 9895 had spent its life in Kansas dryland wheat. Dry, dusty, low moisture crops. When Dale ran it through Missouri soybeans in October 2019, it struggled. The rotor plugged twice in the first 100 acres. The cleaning shoe couldn't handle the green stem volume. The feeder house chattered when Dale pushed ground speed past 3.8 miles per hour. He called the farmer he'd bought it from in Kansas. The guy said, "Yeah, that machine's built for wheat. You're going to have to slow down and adjust." Dale slowed down. He adjusted the rotor speed. He opened the concave. He reset the fan speed 3 times in 2 days. By the 3rd day, he had the combine dialed in enough to run 4.2 miles per hour through 38 bushel beans without plugging. It wasn't fast, but it worked. The backup tractor was worse. The 8160 burned a quart of oil every 12 hours. The clutch slipped when pulling anything heavier than a grain cart. The front axle had a shimmy that got worse above 18 miles per hour. Dale knew what he'd bought. He'd bought cheap iron with problems, iron that would cost him time and frustration. But it was his iron. And when it broke, he wouldn't be waiting 9 days for an email that said no. He ran that Massey Ferguson fleet through fall harvest 2019, through spring planting 2020, and through summer spraying without a catastrophic failure. The combine needed a new feeder chain in April. Cost him $1,840 in parts and labor at a shop in Hannibal. The 8660 needed a hydraulic pump rebuild in June. Cost him $2,200. The backup tractor finally blew the clutch in July. Dale pulled it himself in his shed and installed a replacement kit for $680. Total repair cost for the first 11 months, $4,720. Compare that to the $22,700 John Deere wanted for the transmission. Dale wasn't keeping score, but he noticed the neighbor question. By spring 2021, Dale's Massey Ferguson fleet had been running for 20 months. Other farmers noticed. Rick Menke asked him about it during a seed delivery in March, said he'd been watching Dale's equipment in the field and wanted to know how it was holding up. Dale told him the truth. "It's not perfect. The combine's slow. The backup tractor burns oil, but it runs, and when something breaks, I fix it without wondering if somebody's going to cover it." Rick asked if he'd ever thought about going back to green. Dale said, "Why would I?" Rick said the dealership had changed their service policy. said they were covering more goodwill claims now, said they'd helped him out on a hydraulic failure that would have cost $8,000 out of pocket. Dale said that was good, said he was glad the dealership figured it out, but it didn't change his situation. Rick asked what he meant. Dale said, "They changed the policy because I left. If I'd stayed, I'd still be the guy who paid $22,700 for a transmission that should have been covered. I don't need to go back to teach them a lesson they already learned." Rick didn't push it, but 2 months later, another farmer asked the same question. Then another. By summer 2021, Dale had been asked 4 times if he'd consider switching back to John Deere. His answer was always the same: no, the 5-year mark. In August 2024, Dale Hoffman hit the 5-year mark with his Massey Ferguson fleet. The 8660 had 6,140 hours on it, still running, still pulling. The transmission had never slipped. The 9895 combine had 5,780 separator hours. Dale had replaced the rotor belts twice, rebuilt the feeder house once, and put new rasp bars in every season. It was slow, it was loud, but it got the job done. The backup 8160 had been retired. Dale sold it in 2023 to a hobby farmer in Illinois for $8,500. Bought a newer Massey Ferguson 7485 with 4,100 hours to replace it. Total cost of repairs over 5 years, $31,400. Total cost of new equipment purchases, $44,000 for the 7485. Total cost of running a Massey Ferguson fleet for 5 years, $275,700. Compare that to what Dale would have spent staying with John Deere. $22,700 for the transmission repair in 2017. Estimated $18,000 in additional service costs over 5 years based on the dealership's average markup. Another $60,000 in depreciation on machines he would have kept instead of sold. And the emotional cost of wondering whether the next failure would be covered. Dale didn't sit down and calculate the numbers in a spreadsheet, but he knew he'd made the right call. The dealership's lesson. Schroeder Implement never got Dale Hoffman back, but they never forgot him either. The service policy change that went into effect in November 2019 stayed in place for 6 years. Between 2019 and 2024, the dealership covered 38 goodwill claims that corporate had initially denied. 17 of those were split cost agreements where the dealership absorbed part of the repair out of their own margin. Total cost to the dealership, $127,000. Total customer retention value, unmeasured but significant. Rick Menke stayed with John Deere. So did the other 3 farmers who'd asked Dale about switching back. So did 9 other farms in Audrin County who'd heard about the policy change and decided it was worth giving the dealership another chance. In 2023, the regional sales manager who'd driven to Dale's gate retired. Tom Carlin left the company and took a job with a farm credit lender in Indiana. Before he left, he wrote a memo to the incoming regional manager. The memo was 2 pages long. It outlined the Dale Hoffman situation. It explained the policy change. It walked through the long-term value of customer retention versus short-term margin protection. The last line of the memo said this: "The most expensive customer we ever lost didn't cost us a sale. He cost us the assumption that loyalty is permanent." That memo got filed in the training materials for every new salesperson hired at Schroeder Implement. Dale never saw it. But he didn't need to, the final word. In October 2024, Dale Hoffman turned 59. He'd been farming for 37 years. He'd run John Deere iron for 28 of those years. He'd run Massey Ferguson iron for the last 5. He didn't hate John Deere. He didn't preach about Massey Ferguson. He didn't spend time on forums arguing about brand superiority. He just farmed. But when other farmers asked him why he switched, he always gave them the same answer. "I switched because I needed to know that when I take care of my equipment, somebody's going to take care of me. John Deere forgot that. Massey Ferguson didn't need to remember it because I never gave them the chance to forget." That answer didn't win arguments, but it won respect. And in a community of farmers who've spent decades watching corporations treat loyalty like a one-way transaction, respect is worth more than horsepower. Dale's fleet is still red. His relationships are still strong. And the dealership that lost him is still teaching new employees about the cost of assuming loyalty is guaranteed. Some lessons cost $14,200. This one costs $680,000 in iron, 6 years of policy changes, and the permanent loss of a customer who'd spent 28 years believing that doing things right mattered. Dale Hoffman proved it did, just not with the brand that forgot.